Angry Birds is one of the most successful, if not the most successful mobile gaming franchise on the planet. Its simple and charismatic characters have gained fans worldwide. Naturally, due to its popularity, it has its share of critics. I have heard comments stating that the game is too simple, too crude, and even silly. Regarding its design, the usual regalia of criticism resorts to stating that anyone could have done that game. From a technical point of view, had someone given its completed design to a veteran developer out there, this game could have indeed be easily replicated. However, this argument misses the point that beneath Angry Birds' apparent simplicity lies a series of well-elaborated design choices, some of which aren't self-evident. I have thus decided to make this video in order to share with a wider audience what those design choices were. My goal here is to illustrate that even if a game and its design are simple, that doesn't mean that the effort and development of that game was also simple by nature. Mechanics. One of the things Angry Birds does well is in its core mechanics. The basic premise lies in using a slingshot to shoot birds at a stationary target. The mechanics of the slingshot are set up with the classic premise of easy to learn, hard to master. The slingshot is easy to learn since its design induces the player to perform the sling mechanics, since any form of basic interaction of the slingshot triggers it. Meanwhile, the slingshot is hard to master, since the player needs to grasp concepts of angle, momentum, and gravity for each level. You could say that this mechanic is also present in other games such as Worms and Scorched Earth. However, where Angry Birds differs is in making it hard for the player to do something wrong. Even the most blatantly wrong shot still has an end effect on the level, even if minimal. Meanwhile, on Worms and Scorched Earth, it's easy to miss shots or to just misfire. That design makes sense for competitive games, but not for casual ones such as Angry Birds. Almost every action on Angry Birds, even if poorly skilled, has an end effect. This creates a positive reinforcement to the player who will believe that on the next shot, they're going to do better. As a consequence, they're going to keep playing the game. This concept also molds well with the design paradigm called the 30-second rule. I have heard of two variations of this rule, but they both apply to Angry Birds. The first one states that a player must get a valuable experience out of an application in less than 30 seconds. The second interpretation states that a player must be able to get their phone out of their pockets and engage in an experience in less than 30 seconds. Both of these design paradigms reflect the fast-paced demand found in the majority of users nowadays. To put it simply, users are just overwhelmed with information on a daily basis. Odds are a game will not get more than a few minutes of playthrough by a player in a given day. It may also be that if the user doesn't understand how to leverage an application fast enough, they're just going to skip to the next one on the store. Thus, you could state that Angry Birds' simplicity is not only by design, but it's also by necessity. The slingshot mechanic also ties in well with the form factor in which Angry Birds presents itself, that is, as a touchscreen-based application. The touchscreen form factor implies that players will not have access to the interactivity level of buttons, D-pads, and joysticks. Although one can emulate these on a touchscreen, the responsiveness and feel just isn't the same when using a normal controller. Hence, via using only finger swipes as its core mechanic, the designers adapted the game to mold with the form factor in which the game was present. Allow me to illustrate this. Imagine if instead of a slingshot, the developers used the green cannon of power. Via 4 buttons, the player can set the angle as well as the force with which to shoot birds. There is also a 5th red button that fires the birds away when pressed. Lastly, a number on the screen details what the current force the cannon has, with a subsequent number detailing what its maximum force is. Compare the green cannon of power with the slingshot. Although the end result of both is the same, the experience and mechanics the player has to go through is vastly different across them. With the cannon, the player must grasp the meaning of 5 different controls. In addition, the slingshot presents a more direct and visceral aspect to the player's action, because it's the player that's the one slinging the birds away. The slingshot's simplicity in design allows any player of any particular skill to be able to learn and leverage the controls in a fast and intuitive way. Another criticism of the slingshot is the apparent lack of background art in the areas where the player shoots the birds. The point this criticism misses is that such a lack of background art is probably by design. Imagine if on the slingshot screen there were mountains in the background, clouds, coconut trees with birds on them, and a bunch of other stuff. Now assume that it was the first screen for Angry Birds and that you were playing this game for the first time. Would you say that it's obvious to you, as a player, to describe what it is that you need to do in this game? This extra visual information distracts the user from what is the main purpose of the game, which by consequence further increases its learning curve, even if their mechanics are exactly equivalent. There's another interesting aspect of the game and how it lays out both its tutorial and levels. When each level starts, the camera focuses on objectives and then scrolls left to the slingshot. This concept is clever in two ways. First is that for inexperienced players, it tells them which direction their slingshot actions need to sway on. Secondly, for experienced players, it tells them about the level layout they have to face. This is a clever way of combining both tutorial and level data into one presentation, meaning that the player doesn't need to learn two different concepts for each scenario. Regarding the game's learning curve, the slingshot mechanics, tied together with a point system symbolized by stars, nullifies the need for having a difficulty setting. This means that a player's desire to excel in the game can increase naturally with their skill. A player can do just fine with 1, 2, or 3 stars, since it's up to the player to dictate how hard they want their achievements to be. Hence, the game's challenge becomes scalable to a wide audience without the need to customize its rule set. Lore. Angry Bird utilizes lore in a clever way. It focuses itself on the birds themselves since they are the player's ammunition. This means that throughout the game, the birds never leave the player's focus. This direct approach of constantly centering the action of the birds means that the player is able to engage, empathize, and learn about them as the game progresses. This has tremendous value in terms of lore and experience to the user. Allow me to illustrate so. Imagine if instead of the birds we just had regular arrows, and that a character named the Green Archer of Power was the one aiming them. For every bird type, the archer would have a special type of arrow. Lastly, imagine also that the archer never moved. Compare the Green Archer of Power with the birds. Although one could create a whole story and lore for the archer, this type of setting means that the player has only one character to familiarize with. Since each bird has its own unique personality, by just sheer numbers, we're able to explore more personality traits and potential story arcs. If you don't think that's a big deal, ask yourself the following. How hard would it have been to make the Angry Birds Star Wars tie-in if there's only one hero in its lore? In addition, having the characters as ammunition makes the player focus on them throughout the experience of the game. This has a very subtle effect, since as the camera scrolls, it scrolls with the birds. Hence, you always have them within visible realm of the player. Meanwhile, with the Green Archer of Power, you would only see him throughout a fraction of the game. We could create mechanisms to construct empathy between the player and the archer given that limitation. However, that would require extra mechanics, and if you have understood by now, any extra mechanics in casual game design has its cost, because the designer will need to balance it. Regarding the game's main story, that of pigs stealing the birds' eggs, it's also a simple premise by design. Due to its simplicity, anyone in any region, speaking any language, of any age, any demographics, and any cultural background can easily understand why the birds are angry. Not only that, they can easily associate themselves with the bird's cause. You would be mad too if someone stole your children for food. Summary. Angry Birds' usage of sound, its theme of mystery throughout its design, as well as its progression-based point system are just a handful of other design elements that I haven't covered in this analysis. However, my main point with this video was to give you a glimpse that sometimes simplicity is key to a better experience, and Angry Birds is a clear example of that. I would love to hear your feedback, so feel free to send me an email at adultery.waters@gmail.com. Like and subscribe as well if you like the video. Also, visit my website, www.versus-software.com, for more in-depth analysis such as this one. Thanks for watching. Until then, cheers!